Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hollywood Cine Mysteries, the channel where we uncover fascinating facts, hidden details, production secrets, and mysteries behind classic movies. If you love classic westerns, forgotten cinema, legendary actors, and surprising movie facts, you are in the right place. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Hollywood Cine Mysteries, like this video, share it with other movie fans, and leave a comment telling us which classic western you would like us to explore next. Today, we are traveling back to the golden era of the spaghetti western and taking a closer look at a film that brought together two very different generations of western characters. The film is Day of Anger, originally titled I Giorni del Re, released in 1967. But this movie is interesting for much more than its gunfights. Day of Anger is an Italian West German spaghetti western directed by Nino Valleri, a filmmaker whose career became closely connected with the European Western genre. The film stars Giuliano Gemma and Lee Van Cleef, two actors who became strongly associated with Western cinema. And the combination of these two performers is one of the most important facts about the movie. Giuliano Gemma was already becoming one of the most recognizable young stars of Italian Western cinema. Lee Van Cleef, meanwhile, had already established himself internationally through his appearances in major Western productions, particularly through his work with Sergio Leone. So Day of Anger plays a younger European Western star and an experienced American character acted together in the same film. That contrast became a major part of the movie's identity. One of the most interesting facts is that the film is based on the 1965 novel Der Tod ritt Dienstags by German writer Ron Barker. The Italian title, I Giorni del Re, translates roughly as the Days of Wrath or Days of Anger. The English title Day of Anger became the name most commonly associated with the international release. Like many spaghetti westerns of the period, the movie was created through an international production system. Italian filmmakers, European financing, international actors, Spanish locations, and multiple language versions were all part of the process. This was one of the defining characteristics of European Western cinema during the 1960s. Unlike traditional Hollywood productions, spaghetti westerns were often designed for international markets from the beginning. That meant actors could speak different languages during production, while the dialogue could later be dubbed for different countries. This filmmaking method also allowed European productions to use performers from different nationalities without requiring everyone to speak the same language on set. Another important name connected with the movie is director Nino Valleri. Valleri had worked as an assistant director before establishing himself as a director in his own right. His experience in Western filmmaking became particularly important during the 1960s and 1970s. Day of Anger is one of the films most closely associated with his name. The movie was photographed by Enzo Barboni, another major figure in Italian genre cinema. Barboni would later become famous as a director himself, especially for the enormously popular Trinity film starring Terence Hill and Bud Spencer. So Day of Anger contains an interesting connection between several important figures in Italian Western filmmaking. The music is another major element of the production. The score was composed by Riz Ortolani, one of Italy's most prolific film composers. Ortolani worked across many genres, including westerns, dramas, thrillers, adventure films, and horror movies. His music helped give Day of Anger a distinctive atmosphere and contribute to the film's identity beyond its action sequences. The editing was handled by Franco Fraticelli. Fraticelli was another experienced Italian editor who worked on numerous genre productions during this period. These technical credits show how Day of Anger was created by a group of filmmakers who were already deeply involved in the rapidly expanding Italian film industry. Now let's look at Giuliano Gemma. Gemma was born in Rome in 1938 and became one of the most popular stars of Italian Western cinema. Before becoming a major Western actor, he had appeared in other types of productions and had also worked in physically demanding roles. His athletic appearance and screen presence made him particularly effective in action-oriented westerns. By the time Day of Anger was released, Gemma had already become strongly associated with the genre. His character in the film represents a younger generation entering a violent Western world. And that brings us to Lee Van Cleef. Van Cleef was born in New Jersey in 1925. He served in the United States Navy during the Second World War before beginning his acting career. His sharp facial features and distinctive presence made him especially effective as a Western villain or dangerous gunfighter. But his career changed dramatically when European filmmakers gave him larger and more complex roles. His work with Sergio Leone helped establish him as one of the most recognizable faces of the spaghetti western. By the time he appeared in Day of Anger, audiences already knew him as a powerful Western presence. His casting therefore brought immediate credibility to the film's gunslinger character. One fascinating detail is that Day of Anger was released during a period when the spaghetti western was rapidly evolving. Earlier European westerns had often been criticized for imitating American movies, but by the late 1960s, the genre had developed its own visual language. The landscapes were often harsher. The characters were frequently morally complicated. The violence could be more stylized, and the traditional distinction between hero and villain was becoming less straightforward. Day of Anger belongs directly to this period of transformation. The film also demonstrates how European westerns could combine American frontier imagery with distinctly European filmmaking techniques. Another interesting fact is the movie's filming locations. Like many spaghetti westerns, Day of Anger used locations in Spain to recreate the American frontier. Spanish landscapes have become extremely valuable to European Western filmmakers because they could visually resemble parts of the American Southwest, while remaining much less expensive than filming in the United States. This helped create the famous look associated with spaghetti Western cinema. Wide landscapes, dusty streets, rugged mountains, wooden buildings, and isolated frontier locations became familiar visual elements. But behind those images was a practical production decision. Spain offered filmmakers an enormous natural backlit, and this helped Italian westerns compete internationally without the enormous budgets of Hollywood productions. Day of Anger is therefore not simply an Italian western filmed in Europe. It represents an entire filmmaking system that had developed around international co-productions, Spanish locations, European crews, international casts, and dub versions. Another reason the film remains interesting today is its relationship with the classic master and student Western concept. Without simply copying traditional Hollywood formulas, the movie explores the idea of an experienced gunfighter influencing a younger man. This structure allowed the filmmakers to create tension between knowledge and inexperience, confidence and uncertainty, and old Western traditions and a changing generation. The film's reputation has also benefited from the presence of Lee Van Cleef. For many Western fans, his name alone is enough to make a 1960s European Western worth investigating. His ability to play intimidating, intelligent, and mysterious characters made him one of the most memorable performers of the genre. And when his performance is placed opposite Giuliano Gemma, the contrast becomes especially effective. A young Western star facing an older and more experienced gunslinger created a dynamic that audiences could immediately understand. But there are still many more facts hidden behind Day of Anger. The 1964 spaghetti western that combines revenge, danger, betrayal, and a harsh atmosphere of the Old West. As the story moves closer to its conclusion, Minnesota Clay finds himself surrounded by enemies and dangerous situations. His past continues to follow him, and every step forward brings him closer to a final confrontation. What makes his character interesting is that he is not simply searching for revenge. He is also fighting to regain control over a life that has been shaped by violence and betrayal. Throughout the film, Clay is presented as a tough and experienced man, but there is another side to his character. Behind his strength is a man carrying the weight of his past. His experiences have changed him, and this gives the character a darker and more serious personality than the typical Western hero. The film also uses its locations to create a powerful atmosphere. The dry landscapes, dusty roads, isolated buildings, and open spaces make the world of the story feel dangerous and unpredictable. In a spaghetti western, the environment often becomes almost like another character, and Minnesota Clay uses this style effectively. Another interesting element is the way the film builds tension before its major confrontations. Instead of relying only on constant action, the story often uses silence, long pauses, suspicious looks, and uncomfortable encounters. These moments make the audience wonder what is going to happen next. As Clay continues his journey, the conflict between the different characters becomes increasingly intense. Trust becomes difficult, and nobody can be completely certain about the intentions of the people around them. This creates an atmosphere where even a simple conversation can feel like the beginning of a deadly confrontation. The final part of the story brings together the major themes that have been developing throughout the movie. Revenge, justice, loyalty, betrayal, and survival all become connected. Clay is forced to confront the consequences of the choices made by himself and by the people around him. What makes the ending important is not simply who wins a particular confrontation. The real question is what Minnesota Clay will become after everything he has experienced. His journey is about a man trying to survive in a world where violence has shaped almost every relationship around him. This is one of the reasons classic westerns continue to attract audiences even decades after their original release. Beneath the gunfights and action, many of these films are stories about human nature. They explore how people react to betrayal, how far someone will go for revenge, and whether justice can truly be achieved in a world controlled by violence. Minnesota Clay also represents an important period in European Western cinema. During the 1960s, filmmakers in Italy and other European countries developed their own interpretation of the Western genre. These movies often looked different from traditional American Westerns. They were darker, more intense, and frequently focused on morally complicated characters. The film's title character fits perfectly into this tradition. Minnesota Clay is not a simple black and white hero. His personality is shaped by the difficult world around him, and his decisions are influenced by his past experiences. This makes his journey more dramatic and gives the story a stronger emotional dimension. For fans of classic Western cinema, the film is also interesting because it shows many of the visual elements that became associated with spaghetti westerns. The wide landscapes, tense encounters, dramatic gunfights, mysterious characters, and atmosphere of danger all contribute to the movie's identity. Although Minnesota Clay may not have the same level of worldwide recognition as some of the most famous spaghetti westerns, it remains an interesting film for viewers who enjoy discovering lesser-known titles from the genre. Films like this are important because they help us understand how the Western developed beyond Hollywood and how European filmmakers created their own cinematic language. Looking back at the entire story, Minnesota Clay's journey is ultimately a story of survival and confrontation. He enters a world filled with old enemies and unfinished business, and he must face the consequences of everything that happened before. His determination keeps pushing him forward, even when the odds appear to be against him. The final confrontations provide the dramatic payoff that the story has been building toward. The tension that has been created throughout the film finally reaches its highest point. The characters are forced to reveal their true intentions, and Clay must make his final choices. For modern viewers, watching a film like Minnesota Clay can also be a fascinating journey into the history of cinema. The filmmaking techniques, performances, locations, and storytelling style reflect the era in which the movie was made. It reminds us that classic Western cinema was not limited to one country or one particular style. And perhaps that is what makes these old films worth rediscovering. They may come from another era, but their themes of revenge, loyalty, survival, betrayal, and justice are still understandable today. So, if you are a fan of classic Westerns, spaghetti westerns, forgotten movies, legendary actors, and hidden stories from the history of cinema, Minnesota Clay is certainly a film worth knowing about. And now, our journey through this fascinating movie comes to an end. We hope these facts and stories gave you a better understanding of Minnesota Clay and the world of classic spaghetti western cinema. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to Hollywood Cine Mysteries. Don't forget to like the video, share with your friends, and leave a comment below. Tell us what you thought about Minnesota Clay, and let us know which classic western or forgotten movie you would like us to explore in our next video. Thank you for spending your time with us and for watching all the way to the end. Your support means a lot and helps us continue exploring the fascinating world of classic cinema. Until our next journey, stay curious, keep watching classic movies, and keep discovering the mysteries hidden behind them. This is Hollywood Cine Mysteries, signing off. See you in the next video.